Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today, it's kind of a dreary day. It's between Christmas and New Year's. We're all just sort of sitting at home, and I thought it would be a good day for soup. And I decided I would go ahead and make the Cock-a-Leekie from Outlander Kitchen. Now, I have made Cock-a-Leekie before on the channel, and I'll link that up there. But it was my recipe. It's not super authentic. It was just what I like. So this one is supposed to be a little bit more authentic, very Scottish, been around for a really long time. And so I decided I would make that today. So let's get started. We're starting with a relatively small chicken. And the first thing I'm gonna do is, she says to cut off the wings. I assume so these don't just, I'm just using these kitchen scissors for it because it's a small chicken and the bones are not hard to cut. She says to save these and use them for something else. I don't know what I'm going to use them for. I do keep bits of chicken bones and stuff in the freezer sometimes to make chicken stock once I gather enough. So I would probably do that. I assume it's just so it doesn't fall off into the broth and you have to pick them out because you're not going to strain this one. Also, we're going to use some butcher's twine, which I am not a pro at, but to tie the legs together so it sort of all stays together while it cooks. All right, so it's knotted, whatever, it's fine. Hope I didn't cut it too short. Okay, so there we have that. This is gonna go into a stock pot and we're going to cover this with water. There's a specific measurement. So I'm gonna use that, which I normally would never do. I would just sort of eyeball it and add more later if I need to. But, so we're going to cover this with cold water and bring it to a boil on high heat. I'm probably not going to show you that part because it's really boring. But there are a few other things we need to talk about while that happens. My chicken still coming to a boil. That'll take a little while, but I wanted to talk about the leeks. So I've already prepared the leeks much like I do for mine, except they're bigger pieces. So I cut them in half and then cut them into about 1-inch long sections. Put them in a bowl of cold water and sort of rub them around a bit and try to get all of the silty, sandy, dirty stuff off. It stays at the bottom. Use your hands or a slotted spoon, whatever, and put them somewhere to drain. I put these in, as she suggested, a salad spinner, so I went ahead and used my salad spinner. This is a lot of leeks, just the white and green parts. It's a lot of leeks. So these are all prepared. We're not going to use them all at once, which is interesting. The other ingredients besides salt and pepper, we have some parsley here. It's quite a lot of parsley. What does she mean by a sprig? I don't know, whatever. It's not going to make a huge difference if I put too much in this because parsley is a relatively mild flavor. We're making a bouquet garni with this parsley, which is it's really big, which is why I have a relatively large piece of cheesecloth. We've got parsley, we've got a few cloves, and a few whole black peppercorns. So, and that is, yeah, that is it. So I'm just going to sort of pull up the sides and tie it up with butcher's twine, which I have had so much luck with. So that we can pull it out of the broth very easily when we are done with it, when it has given all that it's got to the stock. There we go. So that's ready. And then the other ingredients we have some whole dried prunes, so dried plums. I just bought some at the grocery store, and they are ready for when they go in. Now, I'm probably not gonna show you what we do with the chicken because until there's one part I will probably do just a sort of one camera thing with because it's a little bit tricky. But when the chicken comes to a boil, we're gonna do a little bit of something there, and then we're going to add half of our leeks and our bouquet garni, and it's just gonna cook for 2 hours uncovered at a simmer, and we're not gonna touch it. Just don't stir it, just take the heat down to a low simmer and let it cook. So we'll show you when we do that. Other than that, we'll see you in a couple hours. So it's just come up to a boil, and we're going to turn it down to a simmer. She says sort of medium low. I'm gonna start there. We're gonna use a slotted spoon to skim away this stuff. I have a bowl with a paper towel in it just to be able to more easily discard it later. So these are, she says, impurities and fat. You don't have to do this part. If you do, though, the stock will be a little bit clearer. I don't always do this part, but since she says to, I will. And I think that's good enough. Can't get anything else to sort of stay in my spoon anyway. All right, all done. You can do that again if you really feel the need, but it shouldn't be too bad after this. We're going to add our bouquet garni that we made and kind of use our spoon to make sure that gets down into the stock. And we're going to put half of our leeks in here. So I'm just going to roughly estimate half. That should be plenty. We're going to use the rest later. Don't stir this, just simmer it for 2 hours. So our chicken has been simmering for about an hour, no, about 2 hours. I did turn the chicken over. I didn't stir it, but I did turn the chicken over at about an hour because it seemed like part of the breast and the leg was not going to be submerged. Oh, okay. And now we're going to take out the bouquet garni, which has given everything to the stock. You can always drain your plate back in. And I'm going to try really hard not to pull the chicken apart, but I did. Oh well. And take this out. We're going to not use the breast meat for our soup. She says to reserve that for another use, but we're going to shred up the dark meat to put in the soup about 5 minutes before we eat. Now, what we need to do now, I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit. We don't want it to be more than a simmer. She also says you can skim this at this point, but there's not really a lot to skim. I don't see anything. There's definitely some fat in there. I don't really care about that. But there's no foamy stuff to skim. So now we're going to add the rest of the ingredients to this. We're going to add our prunes, just whole. There we go. And the rest of the leeks. So some of the leeks will be, a really long cook because they were in there for, a long time with the chicken, and the rest will be sort of, cooked, but sort of less cooked. Because we're going to cook this for 30 to 45 minutes until those are tender. But we also need to add some salt and pepper to this. She says originally they would have used what they called a Jamaican long pepper instead of black pepper, but we didn't have one of those. I think that would have gone in the bouquet garni. It's also a little bit spicier, whatever. I don't know when black pepper started being available, but whatever. So, salt, pepper, simmer for another 30 to 45 minutes. And right before we eat, we're gonna put in just the meat from this chicken, just the dark meat, and it'll be ready to eat. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make the Cock-a-Leekie soup from Outlander Kitchen. I don't think soup is in the name though, but it is a soup. So I have previously made my own Cock-a-Leekie soup on this channel. Mine is not authentic. Kind of made it all up myself, looking at the internet and putting some things together and making it the way we like. This was a good soup. It was a very light soup. There's no rice or barley like I put in mine, or any sort of noodles or carbs or anything like that. So it's vegetables and meat and a lot of broth, which is fine if that's what you're looking for in your soup. The prunes were kind of interesting. I don't think we loved it, but it wasn't bad. Tasted fine. But we did find it to be sort of a light meal. So you would definitely want to have this with something like the brown buns at Bewley, which I've made, and I'll link up here. So it's definitely a lighter soup than mine. And my kids, one of them liked it. The other one, who really adores my soup, just refused to eat more than a few spoonfuls of it. So he claimed he doesn't like leeks, when mine also has a lot of leeks in it. So can't be that. Who knows? It's not that difficult. And I did use the leftover chicken breast that you don't put into the soup for a chicken salad, and that turned out really good. But do remember that you will need to salt anything that you use that in a little more heavily than you normally would, something like if you were using rotisserie chicken, because it's unsalted. You don't salt the broth as you're making it. So you only salt everything afterwards. So that meat has no salt. But it was really delicious, and I think it was probably one of the best chicken salads I've made, at least in a while. So I would call this pretty easy. You don't really need much. There weren't a whole lot of ingredients, and supposedly it's pretty authentic, but it is a very light meal. So it's probably something you could have in the summer if you really wanted to, instead of just a hearty winter comfort soup. Probably great if you're sick. Anyway, if you enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and come back and watch me make something else next week.